Thanks. Hey, everybody, we're going to get started. So thank you so much for coming out. And thanks for joining us on Tuesday at A16.
We're gonna get started. If you can hear me, clap once. If you can hear me, clap twice. Over to you.
He's been doing this for a bit longer than I have, so he's a bit better at it than I am. But thanks so much for joining us on this Tuesday at A16's Tech Week. And I definitely want to get started by thanking first Andreessen Horowitz for putting on Tech Week and helping us amplify this event, helping you all be aware of what we're doing here tonight. But then also a big shout out to Y Combinator for this amazing space. I've never listened to a tech talk in an old power generation company building with the giant turbine. It's pretty cool. And also shout out to Maria at Y Combinator helping us set everything up. Shout out to Beth at Replit. Shout out to the entire support staff for helping this all come together. But I'm Matt at Replit. I work in developer relations. Before I kick it over to what you all are here for, and that's to see Amjad, Michele, and Jared, I'm going to give a quick demo, talk a bit about Replit. It'll be about 10 minutes long, just so you know what to expect. And I'm going to talk about what Replit is. I'm going to talk about what the Replit agent is, and then I'm going to talk about why you should care. And specifically, I'll explain kind of how this differs from traditional ways of building, but also AI tools, one-shot AI tools that exist today. So this is Replit, just a very broad overview. You know, at a glance, if you're non-technical, that might be a bit confusing, but if you are technical, it might look a bit like an IDE, but it's a lot more than that, and we'll talk about it today. So if you're not technical, the main takeaway here is that Replit is an all-in-one environment for building and deploying apps with code. This is a code-first tool at the moment, but we take care of the setup for you, right? So you can focus on building. And we provide AI to simplify development. The Replit agent was released a couple weeks ago. I'm going to show you guys a demo of that. But then there are also inline AI tools for editing and modifying your code. And the most important thing, I think, is that we take care of deployment and environment configuration, which means you can go from localhost, right? You can go from running something to live, it being deployed on the internet as fast as possible. And we'll talk a bit about what that means. But I think an important question is, right, so what? This is a big fancy tool, right? There's all this code running. It means that you can install any language in seconds. So this GIF here is installing Python and Node in its own isolated environment in this REPL, which you can think about, we'll talk about if you're more technical, you can think about it like a container. But if you're not technical, just think about it like it's its own place to write code. It's its own separate computer. So you don't have to worry about configuring virtual environments or even figuring out what those are. You can focus on writing code and building things. And that means you can install any language in seconds. You don't have to worry about secrets. We can configure databases for you. You can collaborate in real time, deploy those projects in 2 clicks, and do it with the help of AI. Now, if you are technical, well, actually, show of hands, how many people here would consider themselves technical? Sick. I'm not actually asking for this presentation. I'm just going to tell jokes later, and I need to know if you're technical or not. So if you are technical, Replit's a cloud-based IDE. It's built on instant virtual environments or containers. Our head of engineering, like our CTO is here. He's probably going to correct something about what I'm saying, but that's the gist of it. Essentially, it's an Ubuntu VM. You can spin it up. It has its own full file system, and then we drop the Replit editor on top of that. You can use our workspace, or you can connect via SSH with your favorite editor there. You can add serverless Postgres. It's backed by Neon, if you're familiar, or object storage in a single click. And you can deploy a server, horizontally auto-scaling app, cron job, or static site in minutes. And that's sort of the magic of Replit. And so what if you're technical, right? There's development and deployment parity, which means your development environment, this REPL that you're developing in, a virtual container, is exactly the same as your deployment environment, which means if it runs on Replit, it deploys on Replit. And I haven't found another cloud provider that does that. Other cloud providers are great, right? But I don't see the same functionality there. It also means you can onboard teammates in minutes. So if you're technical here, right, and maybe you have some semi-technical coworkers that are comfortable writing code, they're comfortable using Git, but they're not super comfortable configuring all this stuff on their own. You could create an environment in Replit, and because when you fork a REPL, you're cloning that entire environment, you could just share that with your semi-technical teammates or onboard analysts or others that want to get started with code but don't really have the agency to do that themselves. You can really facilitate that process and democratize building applications across your entire team. Like I said before, you can deploy in 2 clicks, and we now have Replit Teams that supports private deployments backed by SSO. And again, you can do that with the help of AI. So enough about that. We're going to talk about Replit Agent. So if you're non-technical, Replit Agent is everything that's great about Replit, but it's with an AI system that can configure environment, edit multiple files, and deploy your application. right? This is different from things like Claude or V0 at the moment. And if you're technical, I'm going to say agentic. I promise I won't say agentic too many more times. Other people might say it. It's in the title of this talk. But it uses the latest LLMs and has access to all of the underlying files and tools in the Replit workspace. And again, that's different because if you build something with a one-shot LLM tool, you don't have access to that environment. You don't actually know what's going on, and it's probably like on Rails, some sort of very simple React application. That's changing quickly, but the Replit agent has access to databases. It has access to, will have access to object storage and all of the other great things in Replit. So I'm going to run through a quick demo here. This is not live. I'm not that impressive to do a live AI demo, but here we have a very simple app being spun up. And what we're going to do is ask the agent to create a restaurant voting app. So everybody can go on your team can vote where they want to go for lunch. And you could imagine this being more complex or an internal tool, but immediately the agent is jumping in and not just writing code, right, but configuring an entire environment. So the first thing it did was create a Postgres database. Now it's going through writing Python files, also wrote a static folder for HTML, other assets for a simple vanilla JS app. And now it's installing packages. And our engineering team recently added UV support, which speeds that up, I think, 2 to 4x. So the point I really want to drive home here is more than just creating an application. It's creating an environment and then giving you that environment and enabling you to do really whatever you want with it, whether that's continue to build, share it with others, or really anything you can think of. This is also unedited. I think I sped up like a couple steps, but this is end-to-end exactly what you'd see if you were building with the Replit agent. So once the agent's done, it's going to spin up this app. You can see it's making some changes to the database there. But at the end of the day, we should have a working restaurant voting app in a couple seconds. I talked a little too fast. So there you go, and I can test this out. First I'll say, yes, that does look good, and we can try and add a restaurant. Awesome. It's almost like I knew that was going to work. And so, right, this is different because the data will persist, and it's backed by Postgres. This data is being written to a database, and so we can have confidence that this is a production application. With Replit, you have 4 different deployment types. You can configure those in just a couple clicks, and then, as I've been trying to explain, the entire environment is going to be deployed instantly using Replit deployments. And there's a little call out for the private deployments, which are available in Replit Teams, which you can go check out at replit.com/teams. We also have our head of sales here tonight. I'm sure he loves to talk about it. Or you can find me. And so I did speed up the deployment step. That usually takes 2 or 3 minutes. But taking this environment, the entire environment, packaging it up, putting it live on the internet at its own URL, and then just like that, it is available. So this really end-to-end, I would say, right, takes maybe 5 or 10 more minutes than I demoed here because this is a live demo with the agent. But I do want to illustrate that this really is what the Replit agent is. And as Michele likes to say, I'm sure he'll talk about, this is the worst it'll ever be, right? It's only getting better from here as the underlying technologies improve. So that's all I have for you. That's an intro to Replit and the Replit agent. Again, I'm Matt at Replit. I work in developer relations. If you'd like, I'll be around tonight. Come find me, say hi. If you can't, you can find me on X or LinkedIn above. Also, we are hiring, so come find me, talk to me about that. And since we're mostly technical here, how do 2 Git commits resolve an argument? Some people are giggling. I don't know if that means they get it. They hash it out. All right, that's it for me. I'll let you guys get to the real talk.
So one of the things I'd love to start with is like, what's happened? So for folks who don't realize, you guys just launched this, was almost exactly 3 weeks ago now, right? Mm-hmm. So 3 weeks ago, and this is the first, I mean, there are a lot of people who are working on like coding AI agents of various flavors, but this is the first one that can actually build a complete web app and deploy it by itself with no human intervention required that's ever been launched to the public. This is completely new.
Yes, yes. There's been a lot of sort of like semi-agentic things, and they're great things. Like there's like V0, there's Cursor's Composer feature, but they kind of are a lot narrower. And when we were designing Replit Agent, we took this this toothbrush test. The idea is that you want to be able to design something that people want to use every day. And so anytime you have an idea, you should be able to just go to Replit Agent and for it to do it. So if that's the case, that it needs to be able to talk to the cloud, it needs to be able to store things in the database, it needs to be able to deploy to the cloud, and it needs to be really full stack. And so that's been the driving thing for us.
And the other cool thing is that even though Replit has like millions and millions of users, you didn't like do some super limited alpha release where you need to be one of the chosen people to use this. You just like put this up and let anyone who's willing to pay just like pay and start using it, right?
Yeah, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Like day one, you're just like, go to town, folks.
I might not be here if the launch didn't go in the right way. No, just kidding. Yeah, I mean, we did it the way because ultimately it's better to ship and get feedback from the users. And we learned so much in the past few weeks that it wouldn't have made much sense for us to do like a very small release only to a few folks. We definitely did a lot of dogfooding internally, and we learned a lot by doing that. But eventually you just gotta ship and see what people think about it. When you launch something at Replit, it means that you get a lot of love and a lot of backlash because the community is huge. And we didn't make every single user happy, but we also made a lot of people fall in love with a product that they've never seen in their life. So I don't regret y'all doing this big launch.
Okay, so 3 weeks ago, you took this like totally new thing that the world had never seen before, and you just like threw open the doors and let your millions of users just like bang on it. Like, what's happened? What have you learned?
Yeah, I mean, the most exciting thing is that people who have never coded before, people who don't have the inclination or talent for coding, can now make things and experience the feeling of coders. So programmers here in the audience, do you remember like the first time you made something? It feels great, right? There are a lot of people that don't experience that. And I think that the most exciting thing was when people like, there's a very famous designer that tweeted something a couple days ago, Andrew Wilkinson, who runs the Tiny firm, who owns a bunch of design assets like Dribble and things like that. And he says, I've been a designer all my life. And at every stage of my life, I had to go to developers to ask them to prototype even simple things. And for the first time in my life, I am able to build these things by myself. And I think that's really profound. And the next tweet was like, I need more quota. Can you give me more quota? And the tweet after that is like, make the design better. I'm a designer. Yeah, so anyways, there's a lot for us to work on, but I would say, for me at least, the most inspiring thing is that it's empowering.
Do you have some specific use cases, specific user stories that have really been like, oh, wow, like I would have never expected that to happen?
Yeah, my favorite one is there is a small company of real estate agents in Ohio that are using the product to build like back office automations and processes. These are people that are not really connected to the Silicon Valley bubble, right? So this is sort of escape the Silicon Valley bubble and are now empowering normal everyday people to run their businesses more efficiently because of Replit Agent, and that's one that I'm excited about. Do you have one?
I changed my evening habits. Instead of doom scrolling on X, I'm actually watching videos of Replit Agent on YouTube. And my favorite one has been, I think there is like a retired guy who has built an app to collect all his memories, like all his pictures, and put them on a map with pins and kind of rebuild the history of his own family. And you could see at the end when it actually worked, it was almost like about to start to weep and cry. I don't know, that was very emotional, like figuring out that to empower people to build something that they wanted to do for literally decades. I think it says in the video, I've been trying to
15 years.
15 years, exactly. That's it was my highlight.
So we started thinking about this idea of personal software. So obviously there's like business automation software, which is going to be really great. But the idea of personal software is that you want to make software for your family, for your kids, for yourself. Another one I saw was
Like basically nobody does that because it's way too expensive to make software. So like nobody writes software for themselves except some like hardcore programmers do. But like regular people don't write their own software.
And I feel like we're at the precipice of this. So this guy wanted to teach his kids about color mixing, and how you can mix RGB to create any kind of color. He asked the agent to do that. They created the app really quickly, and his kids just had a blast with it. And so I think personal software is probably going to be as big as personal computing. You know, 1984 was like when the Mac was launched and like personal computing became mainstream. Maybe 2024 is like when personal software becomes mainstream.
And if that sounds crazy to you, remember, the personal computer sounded crazy to most people at the time it was invented too. The idea that people would have a computer in their homes, like, why would anybody need a computer in their homes, was what most people thought.
Yeah, another mind-blowing thing is like a large percentage of users use it on their phone. Like, use Replit. Anyone here has a
They're
Replit app
coding on their phone.
We have a few people here. Oh, look.
Nice.
That's awesome.
Do you guys write code on your phone? Yeah? Wow. That kind of blows my mind.
Did you imagine this when we were going through YC?
Oh, you too? Oh,
There we go.
Replit app over there. Okay. Wow. Oh, you deploy from your phone. Oh, that makes sense. You can like check up on the deployment status. You don't have to be like tied to your computer the whole time.
Wow, I'm not going to tell your employer.
Go Cody.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about the history. So like a year ago, Replit had already been around for how many years?
Oh,
Almost a decade.
Yeah.
Yeah, almost a decade. It had a very large, very successful business. Incidentally, raise your hand if you've used Replit.
Ooh,
Oh my God,
awesome.
it's like every hand.
Thank you.
Do you, is it still weird to walk into a room and like everyone is one of your users?
It's still surprising that it works.
Okay.
The app works, that's great.
Yeah. So a year ago, you had this very large, like really successful business, and you decided to make a really big bet on basically a totally new product direction on all this LLM stuff. You didn't have to do that. You could just kept operating Replit. Like, what made you decide to place this, you know, to allocate such a large percentage of your company's scarce resources towards this new thing?
Yeah, so I think from basically the first time I saw a large language model, the idea of being able to do actions and not just complete text was something that really captured my attention. Early 22, I think, I wrote this huge thread about agents, which is now like more than 3 years old, about how agents are going to really revolutionize software. It's going to make it a lot easier for people to write
In
programs.
2022.
22.
This is pre-chat GPT.
Yeah.
No one was talking about agents back then.
No one was talking about it. Yeah. Someone can pull it up. But someone else was thinking about agents, which is Michele. And actually, we met Michele when we were starting to talk to Google. And do you want to tell them about the demo that you showed us?
Yeah, so I was in the team that built Palm, and I think before we even released it, I showed Amjad a demo where on Replit, I was connecting to services on GCP and generating all the code on the fly. And I was taking slides from one of your, I think from RepelCon, and passing them basically to a model that did OCR and giving that back to an API, and it was all automated on Replit.
So that was sort of the first glimpse of, oh, you can do these agentic orchestration things with the cloud. And then we tried something like that internally, but like it wasn't there. The context window was especially very, very small around 22, early 23. And then Michele joined and wrote the manifesto, if you want to talk about that.
Yeah, mine is much younger, it's only 15 months old.
Yeah.
But if you go through that, you will read basically all the high-level details of the agent that we just shipped a few weeks ago. And I think it was like a slow roll in the sense that, you know, for many months we build infrastructure, and every now and then we try to see if, you know, we're almost there to really go full steam on the agent. The reason why we didn't do it is models were simply not there yet. And I think, you know, you see it yourself with all the other companies that are building similar products, not only on coding. I think there's been like a step function improvement with the latest OpenAI and Anthropic models. And the moment we started to see that our demos were working well, then more and more people in the company rallied behind it, and the rest is history.
Which model was the big unlock?
my favorite unlock has been Claude 3.5 Sonnet in terms of coding capabilities, because we are building a coding agent. But I think the latest frontier models in 2024 are really what unlocked agents as a whole. And I love the fact that the community is building in public. The LLM research community, of course, is all entrenched into big labs, but most of the agent builders are here, and they write about it.
And can you talk a bit about what it took to build this? Like this thing that we just built, how many people worked on it? How long did it take them? How was the actual process to build it like?
Yeah, so April this year, maybe March, when one of our people on Michele's team, on the AI team, is Jen here?
Yep. There you go.
Wrote the prototype, and I remember showing it to me, and I literally saw this like baby agent on his local host, and Michele and I decided that the time was right, that right now, based on what we saw, that we can really invest in it, and we tend to not dabble when we really like something, so we took, I would say, like half the engineering team,
Yeah, roughly.
like half the engineering team, maybe a third of the company, into a room, I think in April. And we sat down and I said, okay, this is the agent task force.
And that was half the company.
Yeah.
So for folks who haven't run a company the scale of Replit, it's very unusual for a company that has a product that's working really well and has millions and millions of users and growing really fast, to take half the company that was working on the current product and have them instead work on something that's like a prototype on like Jen's local host.
Yeah. Yes, and a lot of people disagreed internally. Some people left because of that. But it's like, yeah, you have to do it once you see the future. Like, I think you have to really bet on that, and we did, and it was really awesome. It was really chaotic. There were some tears. There was no blood, luckily.
Not at all. Some smelly war rooms, though.
Yes,
Yeah.
but it was really intense. It was almost like YC again. And at Replit, we like to run these like mini YC programs almost, where like what we learned from YC is like you can go really, really hard for 2 to 3 months at a time at least, you know? No one can keep it year long. And so we went really hard for 2 to 3 months. Michele every day would decrement the counter to the deadline, and the deadline was pushed maybe 2 or 3 times. And I would say the last 3 weeks were the most inspiring 3 weeks of my career, because we changed the architecture fundamentally. The AI team came up, and you can talk about it in a second, came up with a new architecture. We changed the UX fundamentally. Essentially, the last 3 weeks were as intense as the previous 3 months. And that allowed us to launch on that day.
How did you change the architecture?
We wanted to build something even more ambitious. I would say we set a deadline. A month before the deadline, we felt, okay, this is kind of working, but maybe it's not as reliable as we wanted. Can we do more? Can we do something bolder? And rather than working on small iterative improvements, we went on the whiteboard and said, hey, can we do something much crazier? And the key insight is, the longer our agent trajectory runs, as I was mentioning before, the more probability you have that it's going to go the wrong way. So a trick there, rather than waiting for models to become better, is to do as much as you can with the fewest possible amount of steps. And we basically rehold the entire thing. And if you see right now, we are very fast creating the initial prototype, except when the Wi-Fi is not working well. Like
We need to make it more resilient to Wi-Fi issues.
That's not an AI problem, though. Just to make sure.
Yeah.
And it was, but it was worth it. I think everyone in the agent task force eventually was behind it, but that's the intensity that Amjad was talking about. If you show up on a Monday and say, hey, we spent the weekend rethinking the entire architecture, you ruffle some feathers, but it's worth it.
Okay, so speaking of the architecture, I'll bet a bunch of people here are working on AI agents. Yeah, raise your hand if you're like working on an AI agent or thinking about working in the AI agent space. Okay, quite a few people. All right, so for those folks, can you talk about like the technical architecture? Like how does the thing work under the hood, and what sort of like advice could you drop for people who want to build their own AI agents and have them work as well as this one does?
Okay. So the architecture is multi-agent. The reason why we did that is because you don't want to put in scope as many tools as you created and a lot of different instructions. So one of the key recipes to build a more reliable agent is to have the most narrow scope you can think of. So we have a team that looks very much like a small YC company. We have a manager, we have software editors, we have a verifier, and then we have a constellation of different tools, which in all honesty, we didn't have to build during this project. Replit has been around for several years, so most of the tools were there. The challenge is to make the tools talk the right language that allows you to orchestrate them reliably with an LLM. So there is this field, I think, that is starting now in the research called ACI, so Agent Computer Interface, and we had to come up with the right way to build the interface between tools and the agent. And yeah, I don't know, if anyone has questions, I can go like a bit more in detail about the challenges. Definitely, if you work with code, you realize that creating files is relatively easy with a frontier model. Editing files is much harder. If you want to do that reliably, if you want to make sure that the model is not lazy, you can basically destroy your application with just one LLM call. And that's the reason why we allow you to revert, and we take a lot of checkpoints. It's hard to detect that, so we'd rather have the user in the loop, rescue the situation.
How much of it was like a design challenge rather than like a LLM challenge? Are you fine-tuning to get the performance that you're getting, or is it Claude but with a like the NCI?
We tried a bit of. Oh yeah, the question is, I'm gonna paraphrase. Did you put more effort in fine-tuning a model to make the agent better, or is it rather the ACI problem, like taking Claude and using it correctly, and also like all the HCI work on the product per se? I would say it's more the latter. We started by a relatively simple architecture, and we tried to fine-tune models to make it more reliable, and then we realized that relying more on Sonnet and on its editing capabilities, and then building the right interface to the tools really gave us a big lift. And from there, we definitely have work going on right now where we are still fine-tuning models or using like some capabilities that are still not available at large. But there is so much you can do with a frontier model and the right way to prompt it and to use it.
Shall we open it up for questions, guys?
Yeah, why not?
All right, let's do it.
What's your workflow for like QA or evals or like offline? You're kind of measuring quality. How do you do this?
Great question.
So the question is, how do you measure quality? Quality, yeah.
And iterate on quality, making it better.
All right, so the way we do evals is, first of all, vibe checks are extremely important. When you're dog fooding, the best thing you can do is you kind of force everyone inside the company to use it all the time. Luckily, after the product started to work, people wanted to use it because it was fun. So we got a lot of internal feedback. It's easier to eval agents on a step-per-step basis. So like we have a relatively good way right now to understand if from one step to another the agent is following the behavior we expected or not. It's much harder to do that end-to-end. So we have some ways of testing end-to-end, building one of these relatively simple applications. And we are building something more advanced now where we're gonna basically imitate what a user does when they're in front of a web application. You see part of that logic already in the product when we take a screenshot and we interpret it and then we make decisions based on that. But we're gonna go all the way to having another verifier agent that literally clicks and sends input to the web application, and we're basically gonna study those traces.
Do you have a checkpointing mechanism where you're like, okay, it started doing wrong here, restart from this exact point, and you do that?
We do. So the checkpointing is already there. Like Amjad was pointing at it during the demo. And we also have a reflection loop in the agent, which means every few steps, we try to assess if we made progress or not. If we didn't, we roll back automatically. So that we do our best not to get you stuck in our local minimum.
There's an important other quality test that Amjad, you were telling me about the other day, which is Amjad as a service. Where was it every Friday afternoon? Yeah, every Friday afternoon, you would sit down with the whole team who was working on this, and you would live test it with a prompt. And every week, you personally would find quality issues, and then the team would go and fix them.
Yeah, I believe, actually, am I wrong? Did we coin vibe testing in the LLM community?
I think so.
We did. Yeah,
Like,
so,
Lucas from Bits and Bytes
Yeah.
quotes you as the
so like even
creator.
going back to 2 or 3 years ago, there was this Amjad test, which is like a vibe test that I've developed quite an affinity to large language models. Maybe I think like them a little bit, but I was able to kind of
Aren't
do
we
that.
all large language models
Yeah,
ourselves?
maybe. We so every Friday we call the agent salon. We get everyone, half the company. We sit down, and I run a test, and those are that hour is either the most miserable hour of my life or the best hour of my life, right? Because the run could go really badly, and everyone is like that. I'm like, fuck, we're gonna fail. We're gonna all get fired, including me. But when it works, it's super fun. Like one time we built like this collaborative game of Conway's Game of Life, and everyone was like playing with it during, and we're like, oh my god, we're gonna make it, and that was a lot of fun.
I also the horror stories like the game days before the launch. You wanna? We had game days, which means we use half an hour of the entire company. Everyone was eating the agent with multiple sessions. And I think we had two of them the 2 days before launch and 1 day before launch. The 2 days before launch was an absolute disaster. So many things failed that we never expected, and we introduced a regression the night before or something like that. So and we had a DM later in the night, and Amjad asked me, do you think we're still launching? And I think I told Jeff, I'm 80% confident that we're gonna be there, and we were all locked in the war room that night, to make sure that the bug would be fixed, which actually happened at 3 a.m. if I recall correctly. And then the game day right before launch was flawless, and then we said, okay, this is gonna happen. That's how it goes.
Okay, so we have this comically large microphone for questions
That's
now.
amazing.
The secret to the comically large microphone is you have to toss it to the next person.
Oh, sweet.
It's designed to be tossed.
Love it. I'm lucky to know Amjad for many years before he was a mega celebrity. Early on, you mentioned that for hiring, when candidate would be talking to some of the bigger companies, you wish you would just skip talking to them. I'm curious, and that advice is, by the way, super true. I'm curious for like, especially the stage from like 3 people to 10, which a lot of people have advice for like 10, 25 plus, but the very special moment of like 3 people to 10, do you have any hiring advice for founders out there?
Yeah, what we used to do is like, we'll ask them, who are you interviewing with? And if they're interviewing with FANGs, you literally hang up the phone. They're not gonna work at a startup, especially at the time when the offers were outrageous.
Glad you didn't do it with me.
So 3 to 10 people, what would we do every interview? We'll do a phone screen, but then we'll bring it to the office and we'll sit down and we'll hack with them for a day. Sometimes we'll even pay them for that if we're in a good mood. But we'll sit down, and you can tell so much about that person just from spending 6 to 10 to 12 hours. But by the way, if the last 12 hours, that's also a good sign, because we were there grinding for 12 hours, and you could tell so much about their code, their work ethic, their culture fit. And so for super early stage, just bring people into the office and just spend a ton of time with them.
And super quick, I remember you dipped your toes into crypto at some point, and I'm curious, do you have any like thoughts right now? I know it's very untrendy now, but do you have any thoughts?
We're still
on it?
super bullish on Bitcoin. By the way, that thread that I wrote about with agents, it talked about coordination between AIs and humans using Bitcoin, and we're still thinking that that's probably part of the plan in the future. Is like, I think we still want to bring in some more market dynamics into the agent.
All right, can you toss it to the person
No,
right next to you?
Has to be across the room.
Okay, all right.
Hi. I'm building a Gen AI agent, like code AI agent for, lets you build apps from doodles, from drawings. Can I stream the output of my agent to Replit, kind of like in a similar way, like in real time? Like I'm thinking of using like Replit as like a
To deploy?
light API to deploy.
Yeah,
And like I think it would be cool to like do like a real time like streaming from my agent, to Replit environment.
come to
Is it
talk to us.
possible?
I think half of the company is around you.
Yeah,
So
I'll show you my
chat
demo.
with us. Yeah. definitely.
Yeah, but by the way, we're super open to kind of working and supporting other sort of agents running on Replit. There's a bunch of them, Aider, others. So we're pro that.
I would love to. So I think it would be really cool.
Toss it to someone.
Hey, Amjad. Question for you. So this is boilerplate. You start a project, but are you in a position, or is it on the roadmap to take the existing code and say, okay, here's what I have, and I want to expand this particular section and build more features there?
Yeah, so we have a feature coming pretty soon that allows you to do that in any code base. And then starting the agent on existing code bases, we have like some research effort here.
I don't want to promise it, but I think it's going to be there in a month. So
Sounds like a promise.
Yeah.
Good toss, good toss. Hey y'all, I'm Omar. Thanks for doing this talk. It's very informative. I'm curious about personally, times that you've failed. Could you kind of let us a little bit into your minds as to times you had to push back deadlines, times that things didn't work, they weren't so glorious. What did you learn, and what do you take with you now, especially now that you're on this uptrend and things seem to be going beautifully?
Yeah, I mean, I think we mentioned a few of them. Like quite literally, that 2 days before the launch, I messaged them. I said, "This shit doesn't work." Like, it's like
literally.
and so I think so. I think there's a sense in which you got to keep going. I think that's the story behind Replit. I mean, Replit even before being a company was sort of a side project, and I had this feeling. It was like you show up every day, and you do the thing, and over a long horizon, you're gonna win, right? And so I think that's really a deep belief that I have, is that there's the ups and downs on the daily, by the way, in a startup. There's the ups and downs of like, sometimes you're growing, sometimes you're plateauing, other times you're hopefully not declining, but it could happen. But at the end of the day, if you zoom out over decades, are you headed the right direction, right? And I think that's what really matters. And you judge yourself based on, are you sort of riding the right waves? Are you making the right predictions about the future of technology? And then are you positioning yourself to make use of that? And I think if you continuously do that, eventually you'll win.
Yeah, for folks who don't know, Replit has a fascinating backstory. This might be a good time to just tell people about the first 7 years of Replit. For years, Replit did not seem like it was going to be successful. It wasn't even trying to be successful. It wasn't even trying to be a company. And then it turned into one. Like the world pulled the company out of you.
Yes.
It's a very unusual story.
Yeah, so goes back to 2008 when I was in college, and I simply wanted a way to write code without having to spend a ton of time installing crap, right? And by the way, that's literally what we still solve with the agent, right? The agent installs a ton of crap, and so I didn't have a laptop, and so I would go to the computer lab in school and continuously do this laborious task of installing debugging packages and all of that. So I thought surely someone would have written like an online compiler that you could write code in. Well, it turns out no one had done that by that point, which was super surprising to me. I was like, how hard could it be? So I started working on that. Had some initial success by just running JavaScript in the browser, writing a few languages that could run JavaScript. But hit a wall when I wanted to run Python. Like, how do you even run Python in the browser? Writing a Python interpreter in JavaScript just felt like a crazy thing, although I tried to do it. And in 2011, kind of had another breakthrough, which was being able to compile the C implementation of Python to JavaScript. And this is what I was saying about kind of, are you on the right trend of technology? And so the browsers were getting more and more powerful, so you could do something like that. And we were the first to do that, and released what became Replit on Hacker News and went super viral by just like being this thing that could run a bunch of programming languages in the browser. And people have never seen that before. And so it was really, really surprising to people.
But even after that, like it wasn't like the day after it went viral on Hacker News, you quit your job and like turned Replit into a startup.
I tried. I was back in Jordan. There was no VC to speak of. I didn't have my own money to fund the company, and so I couldn't do that. And then luckily, a YC company reached out to me, and they were using my software. That's Code Academy, Zach and Ryan. They came out to Jordan, recruited me because I kept saying no. They gave me founding engineer title. I came out to New York, and at that point, kind of Replit was abandoned. I was working on Code Academy, really focused on it. And Code Academy, by the way, was a huge success. Millions of people learned how to code, sold for $500 million recently. But along the way, kind of Replit died a little bit. And I went to work at Facebook, was lucky to work on React and React Native and a bunch of like JavaScript tools. Was kind of the early team working on those. And it wasn't until 2016 that decided to work on Replit again. And the
That
idea
was 5 years after the Hacker News launch.
Yeah.
So you'd been doing other stuff in life, and Replit had just quietly been growing the whole time on its own with nobody really working on it.
Nobody really working on it. I might fix a bug or two on the weekend, but people loved it. Like the idea of just like going to the browser and writing code and running it was something that people, and I was like, you know, there was alternatives as well, but people kept coming and it was buggy and it was like really weighing on me, and I was like, I guess I'll fix it. And then you know, Docker came out and it was possible to do like, you know, server-side stuff, and I started fixing this stuff, and it started growing really fast then, around 2015, 16, and it was growing so fast, I was spending so much money on it just to keep it up, and at that point, like Jared says, it kind of exploded itself on the world, and it kind of forced us to create a company around it, because otherwise, we wouldn't be able to sustain it.
All right, who's next? Toss it to the back.
Hey, thanks so much for sharing. I'm really interested in the future of personal software. I've been devouring the mother of all demos and thinking about how that was almost 60 years ago, and we're still like playing in that plateau sandbox of what Engelbart was talking about. And I've been thinking about the computing environment, and if you build it in a proper way, then really anyone can do anything in there. And you were talking about the register of this tool of like coders get it, and then non-coders are kind of like, I don't know how to do this, but then you've built this like access point. So could you just share a little bit about your vision of the future for personal software?
Yeah, so people were not familiar. The mother of all demos, was it 68? I think
67.
67 in Silicon Valley, I think.
SRI.
SRI, Douglas Engelbart does this demo that basically set the stage for the next, 50, 60 years of computing. He basically demoed Google Docs, Skype, and all the things that Notion, all the things that we like today in one demo. That was called the mother of all demo. You can go watch on YouTube. It's like.
And it was unveiling the mouse and the corded key set. It was phenomenal.
Yeah, and I think so. The idea of like personal software has been around for a long time. Is that you are no longer the sort of consumer of software. Typically, the relationship right now we have today is that there are developers and then there are consumers of software. The vision of early computing pioneers was that we're all creators of software. Like our machines, our environments have like moldable software suite of tools that allows us to build software as we go. And so, the mission for Replit, is to make it so that there's 1 billion people creating software. And so, hopefully more than that in the future. But we thought like 1 billion is like a good number to start with. And so, And so the idea is that we're just going to build a lot of these tools, and we've been building it for a long time, which is what Michele and the team was able to orchestrate. And so we want to build all the tools necessary, all the primitives, and then use AI and agents to be able to orchestrate them in a way that human creators would want. Anything to add?
I love you mentioned that demo because literally 2 weeks ago we had an internal session, a few of us, which we call like the mother of all demos at Replit. Like we wanted to figure out what can we build in the next like 5 to 10 years? How is personal software going to look like? One of the examples that really resonated, I think, with all of us is the fact that Excel seems to be like the common denominator for personal software and like allowing you to use your quantitative skills. It's amazing. It has more like 1 billion users today, if I recall correctly. But at the same time, it's possibly like the worst possible like, generic interface that you can give to people. And we want to break that barrier. Like we want to make sure that everyone can build their own Excel, customized to their own needs. It seems to be there. Like right now, Replit Agent is amazing at building dashboards and building like basic tools that allow you to manipulate data. You can only imagine what's going to happen like next year. So I think all the software that everyone is used to that has like literally like more than 1 billion users today will probably be reinvented in the next few years by being completely personalized. And that's why we're building the agent.
All right, I think we got time for 2 more questions. Choose someone to toss it to.
Hello. So I'm curious, so with the release of OpenAI's new voice model, I would like to know how soon will I be able to talk to my phone and make an app?
You can already do it. You can dictate the prompt, definitely.
And
it's
will
really
it tell
there.
me?
It doesn't respond back with voice yet, but you can definitely dictate the prompt.
How soon until it responds with voice?
1 month.
3 weeks.
Does anyone want to work at Replit? Come talk to us later, okay? We have a lot of cool ideas, but it's a small company. But we'll get there. Give a big toss. There you go.
All right. In terms of product, like, do you envision this being as like multi-agents? Like, imagine if I want to build a more complex system, could I have like a small team of different agents working on a different flow and then putting them all together at the same time? Like,
yeah.
Imagine like a mini ERP or something, and then.
You'd be surprised. Some people are writing mini PRDs in the prompt today. Like, we have a Slack channel where we see every single prompt that people are submitting because we are curious to see what people are building. Some are very short. Some others are writing markdown instructions, with different headings and going very much in detail. Unfortunately, we can't really follow every single instruction because it's overwhelming, but people are already getting there. That being said, we have all the architecture in place to do that. What is awesome about the Replit infrastructure is that every REPL is mapped to an isolated container. You can do whatever you want in there. If it crashes, nothing happens. So we can have like a lot of agents spawn in parallel, each one of them doing a different task. Or think of what is, you probably heard of MCTS and all these technologies where not only you generate, but you also generate in parallel trajectories and see which one of them is the best. You can think of a future version of the agent where it becomes cheaper to run, where rather than doing 1 run, we're going to do 5 or 10, and then we're going to cherry pick the best one. So the moment that compute is there, LLMs are getting more powerful and cheaper. The sky's the limit at that point.
I think it would be really cool to give you, the user, the ability to select how much compute you want to spend on a task. And so if a task really matters to you, or you're really rich and you want to spend a ton of compute on it, you should be totally able to just say like, hey, like, spin up 100 agents to work on this, and maybe we seed them differently, and then we select the best one for you.
All right, we've gotten so good at tossing, we can do one more. Want to toss to someone?
Thank you.
That was easy.
So currently, Replit Agent supports Python mostly, right? Do you have any plans to support other languages soon, or better off other platforms like iOS apps?
I promise not to give a deadline on this one, otherwise people at Replit are going to shoot me in the back. We even have demos internally working well with JavaScript right now. I think we try to optimize for building something that is as reliable as possible for as many people, and we're gonna allow you to work with another stack as soon as we feel confident with that. It's definitely in the roadmap.
Xcode is terrible. Like just build stuff for iOS and I'll be your new customer.
What language are you requesting?
Swift.
Swift is a bit harder because then we would have also to run the entire iOS in place. We're going to stick to web apps and scripts for a while. I think it's better to do that on Replit.
All right, in the back, can you toss it to the guy in the white shirt?
Yeah, almost there.
Thanks. I'm curious, are you using the agent to make Replit better internally?
Replit as a product, not yet. Replit as a company, yes. We have people that build personal apps or that are building dashboards like to track internal metrics. And it has been very exciting to see non-core engineers building applications on Replit and being more productive. It kind of, confirms that our thesis is correct, that we are empowering everyone to create software.
Awesome, thanks.
I have a very related question. So in the demo, I saw that you did not have a code review interface right away, like the GitHub Copilot Workspace project. So when you imagine, as you said, you're going to launch something to start working on an existing project. When you imagine using Replit on an existing project, do you imagine the experience to be similar to this, or do you imagine the experience to be more similar to how existing engineers work with each other?
Ultimately, you will be the people telling us exactly what you like. In my opinion, it will look similar because we are using Git as a backend. So every time the agent does a substantial step forward, we commit it, and then if you don't like it, you can always revert. But nothing prevents us to stop and generate a PR and then ask if you want to merge it or not. Like the complexity here is not to decide when we check point, it's rather doing the right thing. That's where we're focusing.
So the interface itself of verifying whether what has been built is correct or not. I'm talking about that. Like, do you think that will be more on the chat side and manual testing side, or do you think that a review interface similar to what you have on, say, GitHub?
Yeah, no, I think it will be more on the chat side. That's what we love about the agent, the fact that you speak in natural language and you can make progress just by expressing your requirements and your needs. And we're going to try to stick to that paradigm for as long as possible. Rather, we're going to try to make it even simpler than chatting. If we can show UI affordances, even better, because it makes the product even easier to use. There are a lot of tools for the other extreme of the spectrum for professional developers. They're already happy with that. We're building for new developers.
All right, I got a final question. Amjad, you've been thinking about agents for a long time, since 2022, before anyone was talking about this. What do you think is the future of agents, especially for folks who are interested in this area? What can you predict about the future that might help people know what to build?
Yeah, I think one way to try to figure out where the world is headed is see where everyone is optimizing, and by everyone I mean where the big AI labs and the big efforts are going. And certainly you can see that now there's a lot of effort going into reasoning. So models like OpenAI's O1, and there are a lot of efforts going into having models better interact with the world around them, right? And I think that means that 2025, probably the year where agents are going to work really, really well, are going to start automating large amounts of jobs. It's going to start having a real effect on the economy. There's all these questions whether LLMs are going to have effect on the economy, and I think agents is the way, because the thing in the economy that we spend a lot of money on is labor. So making people more efficient is the way where AI will have a real demonstrable impact, that maybe on GDP even in 2026. So I think 2025 agents will get a lot easier to build, and the way we design our agent, I'll give you kind of a free tip, is that build something just on the edge of what's possible, because then when all the AI researchers are really working for you to make your app better. And so in a month or two, your app's going to get better. The month after that, your app is going to get better, and you're riding sort of a wave.
I love that. It's a crazy future. Do you guys have final announcements for folks before we wrap up?
Do we have anything?
Use Replit Agent. It's freaking awesome.
We are looking for people coming to help us build the agent. I think we publish tomorrow a hiring challenge. It's like a nice AI project to build. It's one of the problems that we face with the agent and we cracked. We want to see which one of you can crack it as well. And if you do a great job, we're going to reach out. So that's one announcement that I can make.
I'm also going to put Replit team on the spot. Can you raise your hands if you work at Replit? First of all, thank you, everyone who works at Replit.
Oh, there's a whole bunch of folks upstairs.
Yeah.
Are these all the folks who actually built the thing that we just saw?
Yeah.
Whoa, so like a whole chunk of the team is actually here. Round of applause for everyone.
And please find them and grill them on Replit Agent and anything you want.
Amazing. All right, there's going to be food over there. Please feel free to hang out and talk to the whole Replit team. They built an incredible product.
Thank you.
Thank you.